is Modern Storage Unpacked. Let's go.
Welcome back to Modern Storage Unpacked, the podcast where we make space for what matters. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Kaylee.
In today's episode, I'm actually really excited about this one because we are talking about something that feels like is everywhere right now online. The good old minimalism.
Oh.
So I feel like if you've spent even just like 5 minutes on TikTok or Instagram, you think that everybody literally owns like 3 shirts, 1 coffee cup, and probably lives out of a perfectly clean apartment with no clutter, nothing on the counters, not even a piece of furniture, honestly.
Everyone's decluttering, everyone's downsizing, everybody's becoming a minimalist is what it seems like.
So naturally, when it comes to the storage industry, that can kind of raise a question because if minimalism is taking over, the internet or the world, is it killing storage?
Or is reality actually very different from what we're seeing online? While people say they want less stuff, storage facilities across the country are still growing, they're still expanding, and they're still filling up every day.
Absolutely. So today we'll be talking about the difference between trends and reality, because there is a difference, why people use storage, and how younger generations are really changing the industry. I also would like to dive into whether minimalism is actually hurting storage or if it's just changing how people use it. Let's get into it. So let's start with the big question. Is minimalism actually becoming real life, or is it mostly just an internet trend? I feel like online, just like you said, everyone's decluttering, owning less, but storage facilities are still full. So what's going on there?
I mean, I could actually see where maybe we're not getting the full picture. You always just photograph the pretty corner that has the 3 little items in there and everything else is stuffed in a closet somewhere.
Only where the good lighting is.
Exactly.
So there's definitely a difference between social media minimalism versus real life. Online it can seem like someone just has 5 things in their entire apartment, but real life, you got families, hobbies, work, kids. Even you see like influencers with kids and families and all the things that they do, but like still on their socials and everything, it just is like a perfectly crisp apartment or house. Maybe they have a maid. I don't know. There's like actual minimalism versus aesthetic minimalism.
Oh, yes. Like all the neutral colors.
Neutral colors. I feel like people confuse the two. Hidden clutter still counts as owning stuff. So just because it's not in view of the world and it is shoved under a cabinet, you still own it.
True.
And I feel like also in today's world, there is somewhat of a sense of pressure to declutter. Social media can kind of make you feel guilty for owning normal amounts of stuff.
True. And sometimes depending on what you're seeing, you can kind of feel bad for owning like 5 different pairs of the same exact cut of jeans or 6 different pairs of heels. So definitely depending on what you're looking at, it can kind of be like, oh, maybe I do own too much. Maybe I should start getting rid of things.
I feel like more than anything, people love the idea of simplicity than actually living it. Kind of ties into having to sort through and let go and separate yourself from items that a lot of people just can't do, which is why storage is a thing. Life already does feel overwhelming for most people. So the idea of like less stress and clutter sounds a little bit more peaceful. And I do feel like people love the idea of a simpler, minimalistic life, but I do feel like a lot of what we're seeing today is more of a static minimalism. It's just what you can see.
Yeah.
There's still 30 coffee cups underneath, the cupboards.
So looking into the second part, why people still need storage. If minimalism is really what is eliminating the need for storage, then why are so many people renting storage units?
That's a great question. How we get the most amount of our probably leads and traffic would be just from people moving. I mean, that alone, you never know if, like, let's say your house is closing one Wednesday, but the next Wednesday is when you're closing on your new home to move in. You need somewhere to store things in between, or military families, they just need to store things while on deployment. Most people do rent storage with some kind of life change, whether that's moving or divorce, downsizing, hobbies. It's usually tied to some sort of transition. And so that's like the biggest part of our industry and, probably our traffic base. But then a lot of it goes into, yes, minimalism is a thing, but there's also things that you just can't get rid of, like inherited furniture, inherited things, like family heirlooms, for instance. If there's this big clock that's been in your family for generations. Well, you can't just become a minimalism and sell that. You know, that's stuff that's supposed to get passed on to your kids. So it's not just like storing junk in a sense, but just memories like inherited furniture. Another thing would be college students, kids moving home. Yeah. That's a big part of our market. And then going on to a different side of it, you got all the businesses, which we've seen a lot of entrepreneurship in today's world. And so having space to have inventory, just extra workspace without having to have the commitment of an actual office space or warehouse, because it is very costly. You got
that is true.
A lot of more costs involved in it than it would be just using a storage unit. And then, of course, your seasonal items, you know, like your Christmas tree that you may not have room for, or Halloween decorations, you know, summer sports, hobbies, things like that. So
that's true.
Though even minimalism may be taking over the world right now, there are so many other areas why this industry is still booming that it's not affecting us. Yeah. Or people are just putting all the things they are getting out of their place to become minimalist into storage, which still counts as owning stuff.
Still counts. So even in the younger generation too, they're also changing storage in a really interesting way, because even though people talk more about minimalism now, younger people are still using storage all the time, just a little bit differently than they have before.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the first thing I would say is just them being kind of pushed into smaller apartments or smaller living, because pricing's expensive, everything's expensive, and unless you're like living with roommates or your family, you know, if you're really making on your own, firstly starting off in life in today's world, you don't have the means to get this, you know, big space with all the storage. So smaller apartments, because, you know, obviously the rent price rises. I would also say remote work has become a huge thing with our younger generation. Yeah. So people move around more and they're more flexible. And so I feel like with that, sometimes you may take a job on a whim and maybe you don't have time to get all your things out right then. So you kind of come back for it. So we definitely seen a rise in storage with younger generations with remote work as well. Online businesses is a huge thing. So side hustles obviously have changed our game a bit. Like e-commerce, people selling things online, whether it be like Poshmark. I've seen a lot of that recently in our facilities, like clothes and things. But also just in the younger generation, everyone lives more of a digital lifestyle, I feel like. But people still need physical space for like packages, inventory, whatever it may be.
So the internet says own less, but modern life still requires space, obviously.
We're in space right now, aren't we? So after all of this, I think the real question becomes, is minimalism actually hurting storage, or is it just changing the way people use it? But I feel like we've kind of answered that in a sense that storage demand continues to grow. It may grow in other ways and maybe not towards people just getting rid of their 30 mugs and putting it in storage. But I do feel like there's a difference between simpler lifestyles and complicated lives. People want a simpler life, but life itself is still messy, transitional, unpredictable. You never know what tomorrow is going to hold, and storage has proven to be there for people during those times. It's evolving just as much as the world is evolving, and people's day-to-day lives, whether it be, you know, rent prices or remote work, online, you know, e-commerce selling, it evolves with life in today's world. And I think it's honestly a really unique market. Not a lot of markets actually can evolve in that sense and adapt and still be growing versus, you know, there's a lot of things that could be hindering the market, but it still finds a way to grow. So I think today's episode just proves that minimalism and storage aren't actually as opposite as people think.
People may want simpler lives, but life itself still complicated, whether it's moving, growing a business, downsizing, family changes, or just needing flexibility. Space continues to solve real problems for real people in a world where we are obsessed with decluttering.
Yes. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you follow Modern Storage Unpacked so you don't miss out on a future one. Share this episode as well with someone who swears they're becoming a minimalist while secretly keeping an entire closet of just in case items. I know a few of those. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll see y'all next time on Modern Storage Unpacked.
That's a wrap for this episode of Modern Storage Unpacked. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe. See you next time.